Take 17. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend this session. My name is Drew Lano, and I'll be talking about the topic of psychedelic medicine and the attenuation of depressive symptoms. So psychedelics are substances that have been used by indigenous cultures for millennia. And if you look in figure 1, they have the classical psychedelics, which are comprised of tryptamines, phenethylamines, and lysergamides. And if you look, they're very similar to serotonin, which we'll talk about the neurological mechanisms later. And recently, we found that these molecules have been incredibly beneficial for people that have depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction, as well as a few other disorders. But today we'll be talking about depression in particular. So recently with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've all been affected by it. We've been stressed out by it. We've had much of our lives shaped by this happening. And with people that have mental disorders, their symptoms have been expected to be exacerbated. So psychedelics are something that show to be beneficial in treating these disorders. And with the uprising of so many more cases and just more complex symptoms, these medicines are showing to be powerful tools in treating such disorders. In the context of depression, we have an understanding that the default mode network is one of the sources of the disorder. And in figure 3, I've outlined the general regions that are responsible for the makeup of this region. And I like to call it the physiological manifestation of Freud's ego. And the reason I call it that is because it generally is responsible for our episodic memory, our social interactions, facial recognition, our sense of space and time in relation to ourself and others. So it's our sense of our ego. And so when someone is depressed, their default mode network is greatly upregulated. And in neuroscience, there's the idea that the 5-HT1A receptor is responsible for that. And if we look at it like a rigidity sense or inflexible cognitive sense, the 5-HT1A is very resilient. It lacks any sense of adaptive responses to stress. So as a positive feedback loop, depression can just get stronger and stronger and is very treatment resistant. So current treatment models with SSRIs, SNRIs, benzodiazepines have shown some clinical efficacy, but not nearly as much as psychedelics. And it's good to look at psychedelics in a way that they could be an alternative to people that have tried almost every method. So with psychedelics acting on the serotonergic system, they are agonists to the 5-HT2A receptor, which is associated with cognitive flexibility, increased cortical communication, or neural entropy. So through this increased connectivity, there's increased cognitive qualia, or primary process. And what that means is that people are able to make new associations, new connections, novel thought patterns, which they may have not been able to make before. And that could be very beneficial for someone who has very negative thought patterns or low self-esteem. So in a controlled environment, following set and setting principles, psychedelics, as you look in table 1, have shown to have very good clinical efficacy. And we have psilocybin, ketamine, and 5-methoxy-DMT all shown in the table. Even though ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic, it also has some psychedelic properties, so I thought I may add it in because it has been shown to reduce depressive symptoms. But psilocybin, the middle one, had 51 participants, and in its first dose, 5 weeks post-administration, there were 92% that showed a clinical response. And then 6 months prior, they had a second dose, which had a 78% clinical response, and then 65% that showed symptom remission, which is very, very good. So compared to other models of treatment and therapy, psychedelics have proven to have very good evidence behind their function and working as a potential model for treatment-resistant depression alongside the other aforementioned mental disorders. And I would just like to talk about the methods in which I created this slide, because I collected all this data from PubMed and UCF library database. And through this collection, I created a manuscript. The research is actually from so many of the researchers that may be presenting here today, and I couldn't have made this slide without their help and the forerunners before me. So I'm incredibly grateful for all the experimentation that's been done, all the policies that have been put forward to allow these medicines to help people. And through that creation of a manuscript, I was able to translate that into this poster, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. So psychedelics, as I've said, can induce rapid antidepressant effects, which are greatly beneficial for people that would like some form of relief when other treatment models have failed or they have suicidal ideation. And to be able to mitigate these symptoms and help someone in such a direct way is almost unheard of these days. So this is a very promising field. So programs that provide immediate relief of depressive symptoms partnered with psychotherapy show to be more efficacious. And by partnering psychedelics in a professional setting, that reduces any form of negative experience or negative affect that may occur, because we all have negative thoughts and you're not exempt from them on a psychedelic. So to be able to have a medical professional there or trained professional in the same space as you to help guide you is very important, and I'm glad that people are exploring this avenue more. But I think it's interesting that we should look at the pivotal mental state or the rebus model, because as they mention, there is the possibility of either positive or negative psychological change. So we should be looking at psychedelics as something that are great tools, but as an integrative approach, we should also be looking at interpersonal practices such as meditation or mindfulness, because they also show that default mode network activity gets downregulated. And in doing so, this could help further propagate positive affect and feedback to help integrate their life lessons or integrate with their family or friends or work, find meaningful relationships. So by reducing these depressive states, we have a greater sense of well-being. We provide positive outlooks on life. And I think that further studies should be done with these, because currently psychedelics still have a stigma behind them. And it's kind of unfortunate, but in general, there's a lot of studies being done and it's very good. But I think that consciousness in general, psychedelics do provide great insight into neurological functioning, but the concept of consciousness still eludes us. The concept of qualia still eludes us, and asking these questions may seem a little off topic, but they're still vitally important if we are to understand ourselves and how we are to help other people, because they still have an experience just like us. So looking at psychedelics, looking at meditation, and asking these questions, how can we investigate further, is important as we move forward. But again, I want to thank you for taking the time, and I want to thank you for providing me the opportunity to make an appearance here. It's a privilege. I appreciate the work that everyone is doing, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.